All right, now we come to the episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, the movie that is considered by many to be the best and darkest of the Star Wars saga. And while I personally don't agree with it being quote unquote the best, there are a number of things here that improve on the original in a lot of ways. Basically, let's start with the story. The story this time around, it takes place a few years after Episode 4. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo are now fairly seasoned commanders in the Rebel Alliance. The problem is the Rebel Alliance at the beginning of this movie is in a bad way. They're basically hiding from the Empire on this snow planet called Hoth. So what results is basically the first half hour of the movie is them trying to deal with the very harsh living conditions, almost uninhabitable living conditions of this snow planet. So, but eventually the Empire does find them, thanks to Darth Vader and his keen senses, and the Empire attacks. The rebels barely evacuate in time, and the heroes the heroes essentially kind of split up. Luke, after getting a vision from this kind of old blue ghost vision of Obi-Wan Kenobi, goes to this system called Dagobah to learn from this revered old Jedi master named Yoda, and to kind of further his Jedi training, because he's still, while he's not as much of a neophyte as he was in the first movie, he still has a lot to learn. He still carries around his blaster as his primary weapon in this, and he only uses his lightsaber as kind of a secondary weapon. So he goes off in one direction with R2D2, and in the Millennium Falcon goes Han Solo, Princess Leia, C-3PO, and Chewbacca, all of whom are being basically spend the whole movie being chased down by Darth Vader and his fleet. Basically that takes up the majority of their screen time in the movie. Them constantly trying to outmaneuver and outsmart the Imperial officers under Darth Vader. So it's really it's very much kind of like a manhunt part of the time. It's kind of like a fugitive movie for a lot of it. And yeah, this one definitely is darker. Just in terms of tone. There is really a sense of, I don't want to say hopelessness, but there really is a sense that the heroes are on the run. They can't really fight this tremendous evil that is right on their tails, so they're just reduced to running. There really is. You really do get the impression that they want to turn and fight, but they can't. They would be suicide. And at the same time, Luke really starts to come into his own as this. He really starts to come to terms with a lot of the terminology and even some elements of his past here. When he's learning from Yoda. So, what is good about this one? Well, the performances are improved. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher are all, at this point, fairly they're all more comfortable in their roles than they were last time around. I mean, last time around um they were, I don't want to say trying too hard, but you could just tell that they didn't really know each other. And the performances were still decent, but they just feel more relaxed this time around. They feel more natural. So and that's good because they don't really have each other to work off of too much in this one. I mean, it's mainly Luke by himself with this little alien puppet. But by the way, again, props to the creature guys. There aren't as many creatures this time around, I notice. I mean, really, the only main creature, the only main two creatures are Chewbacca and Yoda. Chewbacca again is played by Peter Mayhew, who and and Yoda is played by Muppets aficionado Frank Oz, who is a very talented puppeteer slash voiceover artist. So he helps to add this really likable kind of mischievous personality to this revered old master. I mean, it's really not what you were expecting when you hear of this wizened old Jedi master. I mean, when you think of the most experienced Jedi alive, you don't really think of this goofy little green alien who's kind of digging through Luke's supplies and stealing his stuff and being all goofy and laughing. I mean, there really is a very likable sense of humor to this character. I mean, it adds, at least in the early stages of his development, it adds plenty of lightheartedness to an otherwise dark movie, and I like that about it. I mean, it's really kind of refreshing. Whenever it cuts back to them, Luke and Yoda, after Han, Leia, and Chewie get away from Darth Vader, because those scenes are always really tense, really well, not always. I mean, it's kind of a split between two things, which I'll get to in a minute. So yeah, the performances are improved. I noticed the sets are a lot more elaborate this time around. I mean, the first time around, the sets, while they were good, they were always very basic, or at least relatively basic when compared to the sets in the other two movies. I mean, the Death Star was primarily gray, and it didn't really have a lot of and it didn't really have a huge color palette. It was very smooth, kind of chrome-esque. Same with Tatooine, the desert planet, and it being primarily sand oriented because it is a desert planet. So tan and brown, those were the colors that they were primarily showcased in the on the desert scenes. I mean, but here this time around, it's the sets are a lot more dynamic. They seem a lot more inspired. I mean, I don't know if this movie had a bigger budget. Probably it did. But yeah, the sets are a lot more elaborate and in some cases very atmospheric. I mean, the Dagobah set, the Dagobah planet, which is this really dark, dreary, foggy swamp planet that Yoda lives on. I mean, it's really a foreboding place. I mean, even once Luke gets used to it, like even when he's training with Yoda, you still get a sense that in the background there are all these really hungry creatures watching him. I mean, it's really effective in in just being this kind of a training ground where you conquer your fear. Luke basically has to learn to control his feelings. He has to learn not just to control his feelings, but to control his body. So that's primarily what Yoda teaches him, and I think it's actually fitting, given the off-putting nature of this planet. I mean, it's just that little bit of irony that really actually kind of makes sense. In that it makes sense that Luke would train there. I mean, he would train in this scary place to learn to not be afraid of this scary place, and therefore purge his fear. So all the scenes with him and Yoda are very well done. They're paced very well. You believe that you really believe in this puppet. I mean, the puppetry is very accomplished. I mean, this puppet feels alive. I mean, it just. I mean, yeah, some of the movements do look a little limited by what movements can be done without you actually seeing the puppeteer. I mean, but at the same time, a lot of them just feel so natural. I mean, Yoda is there. I mean, Mark Hamill has something to play off of. I mean, he can talk to this little creature, and we don't laugh at him for it because it really is that technically accomplished. I mean, it really is that believable. And I think that's one of the reasons that Yoda has endeared for so long, because he really does feel so lifelike. But at the same time, he has a really likable edge to him. He has a real likable, kind of misleading personality. I mean, again, you wouldn't think of this goofy little alien as being a revered Jedi Master, but appearances are not what they seem. That's one of the recurring lessons that he teaches Luke, is that appearances are not what they seem. I mean, he's like, size means nothing. The Force enables you to lift anything. The Force can basically enable you to manipulate anything. I mean, size does not matter. So in that way, it's fitting that Yoda is so small and minuscule compared to Luke. I mean, it works on a lot of different levels. Now, basically, the other half of the movie is Han and Leia kind of pursuing this romance. I mean, Leia displays this very intense animosity towards Han. She doesn't really seem to like him that much, or at least that's the kind of face she puts on. I mean, she just does not like this quote unquote scoundrel. I mean, she calls him a scoundrel at one point, and he does not see through that. He is not fooled by this. I mean, he sees right through it. I mean, you really get a sense that this is a very genuine romance. I mean, is it as interesting as it could be? No, I mean, or I don't want to say that. I mean, is it as interesting as other romance stories? Probably not, to be honest. I mean, some of the dialogue that Harrison Ford has would actually lead you to believe that this is just another woman in his life. It's kind of like James Bond, how he romances all these different women without actually forming a permanent attachment to any of them. I mean, it kind of feels like that just in some of his lines. So, I mean, some of his lines just seem like really throwaway, flirty lines. But in the end, you do buy it. I mean, you do buy that these two eventually come around for one another. I mean, which leads to a fairly sad moment when Han is basically taken away. I mean, they can't get to him. He is gone by the end of this movie. I mean, he's not dead, but he is far beyond their current reach. I mean, they have to. I mean, he is inaccessible to them at the end of this movie. I mean, he's not with them. So I think that just adds one of many bittersweet notes to the end of this movie. So, and another thing that's really kind of bittersweet, getting back to the whole manhunt aspect. A lot of this movie, you see Han and the crew of the Millennium Falcon constantly outmaneuver and outsmart the Galactic Empire. I mean, they get out of so many scrapes, and then at the end of the movie, they think they're safe. I mean, they think they've finally made it to a sanctuary, which is a city headed by Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian. Their guard is dropped. They are ready to get some rest and relaxation from their long journey, and then it turns out Darth Vader is there. He has outsmarted them. I mean, it's really impactful in how just cruel it is. I mean, to have these characters so tired and so ready for a break, just suddenly outsmarted by their adversary. So yeah, it's probably the most. I don't want to say the most, but one of the most dramatically effective points in the movie, when you realize that these heroes have essentially lost. They are now prisoners to Darth Vader. They cannot escape. The jig is up, basically. They tried, but they have failed. I mean, they are caught. They have been caught in a trap, and what's more is that Darth Vader, in exchange for making a deal with this bounty hunter named Boba Fett, who has since become very popular in his own right, Darth Vader makes a deal with this bounty hunter who works for Jabba the Hutt, who again, like I said in the last video, was set up multiple times in this movie. Like Han Solo at the beginning of the movie, he actually considers leaving the Rebel Alliance because he's like, oh no, Jabba the Hutt's got a bounty on my head. I never paid him back. Yada yada yada. And actually, yeah, that comes back to bite him. Darth Vader freezes him in carbonite, in this carbonite slab. Boba Fett takes him on his ship back to Tatooine to Jabba the Hutt. So yeah, they gotta rescue him from Jabba the Hutt, but they almost rescue him from Boba Fett, but again, they fail. I mean, it's just this never-ending string of failure. Towards the end of this movie, I mean, it's although they do gain a new ally in Billy D. Williams, Lando. So at least that's somewhat of a consolation. But at the same time, you lost one of your lovable characters. You've lost one of your main characters, at least for the moment. I mean, it's really sad in that regard. I mean, even in spite of Harrison Ford's wooden performance, I mean, it's I'm sorry, I'm trashing on Harrison Ford again, but probably the moment that everyone remembers from this movie is the climactic lightsaber duel between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Luke goes to rescue his friends, and Darth Vader knows this. Darth Vader, his motive for capturing Princess Leia and Han Solo and Chewie and all them was to lure Luke Skywalker to to this to Lando Calrissian's planet, his city, Cloud City. Lure him over here because he wants to turn him to the dark side. I mean, he wants to. He and his master, the Emperor, who we only see briefly in this movie. He and his master really want to turn this guy because they both sense that this kid has the power to topple their rule. So at first they just want to destroy him, but then they decide, wait a minute, he could be an asset. He can just be another powerful ally to further secure our control over the galaxy. So that's basically what their plan is. They want to turn Luke to the dark side. So there's this really suspenseful lightsaber duel where since Luke rushed out before his training was complete, he rushed out to save his friends without really a plan in mind. By the time he gets there, they've pretty much already escaped. They pretty much already escaped, I believe. So by the time he gets there, they've kind of taken off. They're gone. So he's kind of all alone there, fighting Darth Vader, who is clearly the superior combatant in this fight. Over the course of this fight, you see Luke getting more and more tired, more and more injured. I mean, you can clearly see he is completely out of his league. I mean, again, the result of him rushing out before he could complete his training, which again came back to bite him. And eventually, Darth Vader chops off his hand and says the iconic line, "I am your father," and that. In a way, it is somewhat ruined by how popular this movie has become, because when this movie first came out, I've heard this from a lot of people, when this movie first came out, this was such a shocking revelation. It was such a cruel twist of fate. I mean, it was such a heart-wrenching, just, again, shocking moment in this movie. That you find out that this really evil guy, this really merciless hunter, this merciless murderer, is the long lost dad of your main character. I mean, it's but again, due to this movie's popularity, everyone knows about that line. So there's really not much of a surprise anymore. I mean, unless you live a very sheltered life and have never heard of these movies and just watched them on a whim one day, I mean, you would never be surprised because, again, this movie has become so popular that everyone knows the twist. But with that said, the twist is still handled very effectively. I mean, Mark Hamill's performance just sells it. I mean, you can just see the shock just pouring over his face, along with the disbelief, and slowly that disbelief turns to despair. I mean, it's probably one of his best scenes in the series, to be honest. I mean, it's so effective how he does it. So again, long string of cruel things to put your main characters through. I mean, Luke gets his hand chopped off, finds out he's the offspring of this evil despot. Obi-Wan Kenobi lied to him. So, and Han Solo is gone. I mean, Han Solo is now the prisoner of this evil crime lord on some faraway desert planet. So it really just. Yeah, you can definitely see why this one is considered to be the darkest of the franchise. So yeah, don't really have much else to say about this one, except it's very, very effective. I mean, again, the acting is improved, the creature designs. I I think one of the reasons why the creature designs are somewhat better in this one is that they're far fewer. I mean, like I said, in the first one, in the first Star Wars movie, you had this whole bar of different creatures, but in this one, you just have one, and as a result, maybe it has something to do with the budgetary. Maybe it has something to do with the budgetary possibilities, but since you only have basically one main creature, you can have it emote. You can have it feel so alive. I mean, you can animate this thing so well. So yeah, very accomplished very accomplished puppet. Um, very effective dramatic moments, very effective twists, and yeah, it really, like, even more so than the first one, the end of this movie really gets you hooked, really gets you ready to see where it's going to go from here. I mean, not only to see how they fix, how they rectify some of these failures in the next movie, but also to see how the whole series ends, because at this point the Empire is winning. The Rebel Alliance is scattered. The war is not going well. The heroes are scattered. It really has you curious to see what is going to happen in Return of the Jedi. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. I mean, Empire Strikes Back. It's probably better than Episode 4 on a lot of levels. And while I do like elements of Episode 4 better, this there are plenty of elements of this that in turn are better than Episode 4. Again, there's a reason that it's revered by so many Star Wars fans. It is good. Yeah. Yeah, again, don't really know what else I have to say other than the fact that it is dark. It's a better dark sequel than The Hangover 2.